All right, back under the car, and we are looking at the wheel housing, which is this piece here, and this is the quarter panel. And you can see that back here at the back end, even if I pull the quarter panel in with my knees here, that this flange on the wheel housing is about 1/2 of an inch away from the flange on a quarter panel, and there's no way that I can squeeze those two things together. You just can't, you can't pinch that and make that happen. And as we go up the wheel housing, when you get to about the middle, up here, which is not even, it's past the middle, everything's tight enough that I can put a clamp on there and weld it. So what I'm going to do is from this point right here on down to the bottom corner, I'm going to use that JB Weld stuff to glue it. Now, I'm also going to weld this bottom edge, and you can see when I hold this in place just with my knees, I'm laying under the back of the car right now. You know, it pretty much just sits here anyway. I'm just trying to think of a way to connect these two pieces together from here, let's see, get the camera, from there to there. I want to connect those two pieces together just to make the joint as tight as possible. I also don't want any water or anything like that, dirt, getting in behind here and rusting out my quarter panel. So what I'm going to do in order to use the JB Weld stuff, I don't know how much of the wheel housing contacts the quarter panel in this area where they overlap. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this flange. I'm going to cut vertical, or just cut slots in it so that I can bend the flange over on the wheel housing and lay it flat against the quarter panel, and then that's where I'll put the adhesive. So I'll get it in behind there and then stick it all together. Alright, so here it is. What I've done now is I have cut slots into the wheel housing flange, and that allowed me to bend it flat, and then I took a hammer and a dolly and kind of got behind it and flattened this flange out as best I could. So now when I take the quarter panel, which is in the back, and I'm going to push it in, this wheel housing piece sits down in this groove, and I'm going to put epoxy behind the wheel housing flange here and glue it to the quarter panel. So let me walk you through what's going to happen. I'm going to mix up this epoxy, and I'll show you that. And then after I get it mixed up, I'm going to apply it to the car. And I've discovered that if I come inside the trunk, let me bang the tripod on here a few times too. But if I come inside the trunk area here, I can actually get to the top of the wheel housing. I know that's hard to see, but I can actually get to the top of the wheel housing and the back side of the quarter panel where I need to put the epoxy on. So I'm going to use a combination of applying it from underneath and coming up here at the top. I think it's going to be easier near the very end where I got this piece of blue tape to apply it up here from the top, because I can't get the little spatula underneath the sheet metal from below. So I'll apply some of the epoxy up here, come down on the ground, and apply the rest of it from underneath the car. I know it's hard to see, but I'll do that laying on my back. I've kind of just done it, dry with this spatula without any epoxy on it, just to make sure I know how to do it. You only have so much time to work with it, and then I'll clamp it all up and let it dry. So because I'm working alone, I'm not going to be able to show you a lot of the actual epoxy mixing on the camera, but I'll show you a little bit of how I'm going to do it without having it mixed up yet. Alright, so here we are, we're back underneath the car again, just to give you a frame of reference. This is the drum brake. The van came home, since I was shooting the earlier video. That's why you see the van back there. Before you didn't see anything. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put epoxy on the end of this spatula, and then I'm going to pull the quarter panel out a little bit And if you can imagine, the epoxy is on the top side of this where my finger is, up here. I can get this spatula to go underneath the flange of the wheel well, and then I'm going to like just scrape the epoxy off onto the underside. And I know it looks like when I try to shove it under it's going to wipe it all off, but with two hands I can pull the quarter panel out and then I can wipe it off. And then I'll go back, I'll get some more on there, and I'll come underneath here and I'll wipe it. As I get up towards the top, I can't pull the quarter panel away far enough really to get the spatula underneath the wheel housing. You know, you get them in between those two. It's just the quarter panel fits too tightly. So that's when I can go up top through the trunk and actually apply the epoxy from the top. And I'm going to start at the top, and then I'm going to work my way, come underneath, and then work my way down to the bottom, because it's really easy to get in at the bottom. You know, like here I don't even have to do anything. I'm just going to wipe it in there. So I can just go in and wipe it. So I'm going to start at the top where it's harder. It's going to take the most time. And then, you know, I'll work my way down to the bottom where it's easier. That'll get on really quickly. And then I'll follow up by clamping. I'll start clamping at the top, and then I'll clamp down at the bottom at the end. And that way, you know, you kind of work from the stiffest part of the joint to the most flexible. Okay, so here's the epoxy. I got it all squirted out on each side of the plate. So now I'm just going to mix it together and then stick it on the car. I'm pretty sure I got the same amounts of this stuff because I used the same, you know, amount of tubes. So I had 2 tubes of black and 2 tubes of the hardener, plus the leftover from the experiment batch that I had. And that I measured those tubes in length before I, you know, squirted them out. So I think I got pretty much equal parts in here. So now we'll just mix it up. Make sure it comes out gray. I know there's stuff on this spatula that hasn't even seen the other material, so I am going to scrape it once or twice, but that's about all I'm going to worry about. Get that off of there one time. Get all of that black off of there one time. Okay. I'm going to put that where I'm going to have to lay down in a minute. Okay. We'll just swirl this around a few more seconds. And you can see now it looks like it's pretty well mixed up to me. I'm good with this. It's very consistent. It's all one color. I don't see any streaks or anything. So I'm going to use this now. So unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to show you this on the camera. I don't have a cameraman who can follow me around, and I can't do it by myself. So we'll come back after I glue it up. Let me just turn off the camera. So I'm all clamped up now. I got the epoxy in place. And just a couple of things I'll say about it. It's a lot more runnier than I thought it was going to be. It's stiffer than pancake syrup, but it's not like toothpaste. I thought it was going to be more like a toothpaste consistency, more like a caulk or something, but it's under gravity and this stuff just drips out. I don't know if you can see down here at the bottom, but there's like a big puddle of it down there. It was dripping down onto the plate. So what I did was once I got all the clamps installed, I wiped out as much of it that had accumulated down here in the bottom of the quarter panel onto the plate, and then I scooped it all up with the spatula, and it came around up here to the top side, and I went inside the wheel well, and you can see I kind of got it all over the back of the quarter panel, but I fed it down in from the top here, and it's actually flowing down into the joint, so I'm kind of happy about that. So, you know, I'm going to take advantage of the fact that it's kind of runny, and make it flow into the joint as much as it will before it actually sets up and gets hard. And then I'll come back and I'll seam seal this joint from this side and from the wheel well side. You know, and of course, nothing ever goes like you planned. As soon as I started putting the epoxy on, you know, the light fell down, and then the clamps, you know, they didn't want to cooperate with me either. So I had a lot of issues. I'm trying to get it back underneath here. Let me just hang on a second. So I was saying, you know, when I installed it, of course, nothing ever goes the way you practice. You know, I practiced this at first when I just noticed that that top clamp is off of the little board. I'm gonna have to reinstall that one. But yeah, the light fell down, the clamps fell off. You know, it was a total mess. And then there's some, like, you know, hornet or some kind of bee that's coming around flying in here. I think he likes the smell of this stuff. He's been tormenting me right when I was trying to get everything, you know, done at the critical moment. This is where the epoxy is kind of pooling, right in this little area right here. So I've just been wiping it out of there. But you can see I got these clamps on here. I missed a couple of them. I'm gonna go back and fix those. But I think it's gonna work good. So what I'll do is I'll let this sit for a couple of days. I'll go over to the driver's side and I'll start welding that one up. So come on back and we'll keep working on the Mustang.